I didn't really plan on making a video about Sony's Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man 2, but I felt like I had to. I just finished 2 videos about why other Marvel games have been just awful lately, so to play this one really felt like a breath of fresh air. It's like it addressed every single complaint I had about the last game, and then it made me love the little things I'd never noticed about it even more. Right off the bat, the game throws you into one of the best tutorial modes that I've ever played. From the perfectly Spider-Man opening scene of Peter Parker bumbling around as a teacher, to the race with Miles to catch up with a Sandman Kaiju in the middle of a sandstorm.
Spider tricks don't work on the Sandman, but do sand tricks work on the Spider-Man?
I have sand everywhere.
The game's tutorial boss fight teaches you all the new mechanics for each character, and slowly unravels everything you need to know about the world and the lore and how things have changed since the last game. It's the perfect tutorial level, and I was absolutely amazed by the spectacle of it all. I spent a lot of time playing Spider-Man Remastered on stream recently, so small changes to the swinging mechanics and the maneuverability of the character were instantly noticeable to me. In a weird way, it kind of felt like the leap from the mechanics of Spider-Man the movie the game to the gameplay in Spider-Man 2 the movie the game. Web swinging and wall crawling feels a lot less on rails, and when you're using the web wings, the maneuverability and freedom you feel is massive. I kept saying this over and over on stream, but it's like Insomniac accidentally created the perfect flying mechanic for a Superman game. But praises aside, the game isn't exactly perfect. Or at the very least, the maneuverability still isn't quite as good as Spider-Man 2. Some of the problems I had with the maneuverability in the first game are still there in the second. Whenever you're just wall crawling, or whenever you're trying to transition from swinging to landing on something specific, even if you aim right, it's like the game will autocorrect you to the nearest thing instead. The best way I can describe it is that it's kind of like aim assist, but with the web swinging or wall crawling. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely a lot better than the last game. Stuff like being able to do a loop-de-loop or web swing shot is definitely noticed and appreciated. There are a lot of small adjustments and improvements that make this system a lot better than the last one, but the smaller stuff in interior levels or in small enclosed spaces is still really noticeable. The camera will sputz out on you if you move too fast or you get into an odd corner, especially during finishers, and in general, both Spider-Men can get really wonky really fast in combat. But thankfully, some of the more recent patches have kind of smoothed that out a little bit. Isn't it kind of funny that Spider-Man 2 and Lego Marvel have the exact same opening? Someone pointed that out to me on stream. I think it's a little funny.
It's not funny!
He's kind of funny.
That guy's got sand for brains.
I've done a lot of videos recently where I knock other modern comic book games, so it really restored my faith in the games industry to see this game fly so high and achieve most of what the community had hoped it would. Obviously, this is a game that's going to hold up way better than games as a service bullshit like Avengers or Gotham Knights, but how exactly does it stack up against the other Spidey games? The way the physics and traversal of the city worked really felt like a step up from Spider-Man 1. It felt like a leap from the first movie game to the second movie game in an odd way. The city of Spider-Man 1 was neat and workable, but not really convincing. But the city of Spider-Man 2 feels a lot more real and lived in. It's a much more believable backdrop than the original. From small stuff like the NPCs and the traffic, to more noticeable stuff like how the buildings are designed. The world just feels lived in. And stuff like the Baxter Building's giant fort not being finished feels really significant. It's environmental storytelling, and the game is chock full of it. So the physics and traversal mechanics never quite caught up to Spider-Man 2's, but then again, what Spider-Man game has? For the way the game's built and how the traversal mechanics work in-game, I think it's perfectly passable. And I think it makes a lot of sense that they didn't want to overcomplicate it too much. Comparing the game to Web of Shadows and Ultimate Spider-Man, I feel like it ups Web of Shadows on every conceivable level. The only thing Web of Shadows has on Spider-Man 2, or on any Spider-Man game really, is the air combat mechanics and the wall crawling combat. I still think that Web of Shadows has the greatest of all time air combat for a Spider-Man game. Outside of that, it's like the last third of the game takes the promise of Web of Shadows and manages to execute it to a half-assed degree. But it's a half-assed degree done well. Ultimate Spider-Man still kind of trumps it in terms of story and art style in my opinion, but that could also kind of be my nostalgia goggles getting the better of me. Movie Spider-Man 2 still kind of beats it in terms of traversal mechanics, but I think that Spider-Man 2, being this game, the new game, has better combat overall than any other Spider-Man game. I only really have one complaint. Just let me play as Venom already, goddammit. Overall, it lives up to the legacy of good Spider-Man games, and it definitely matches that bar of quality, and it might even surpass it in some ways. If I had to make a Spider-Man game tier list, it'd probably go somewhere around here.
This is a certified hood classic.
So let's talk about the community's reaction for a bit.
I can't stand Spider-Man! I can't stand him! I hate
After the game came out, Adidas announced a new line of sportswear that was based off of Miles' new costume. This led people to create the theory that the suit was actually paid product placement by Adidas, enraging the community even more over a costume that they already hated.
The absolute worst fucking Spider-Man costume ever designed! Are you shitting me?
What the fuck are you wearing? That suit's not an alien, is it?
It's time for a Miles Morales original, you know? One of one.
You serious?
That shit's ass, bro.
Now, I don't know if that theory's true or not, but the circumstances of other costumes make me pretty inclined to believe it. And the suit is absolute ass. We found out a bunch of random artists and influencers are getting suits in the game for some reason, and I kinda hate this. Very few of the Insomniac designed suits actually looked good in the first game. And the one in Spider-Man 2 that they let that other game studio develop, it looks pretty bad too. A lot of this just feels like corporate, money-grubby bullshit. Like Sony is releasing Rina Sawayama's new record, and because of that, they're gonna try and give her a costume tie-in as a promotion for one of their other products. It just feels dirty and boomer-brained as fuck. I just want to see comic book costumes in the game, not whatever this is. But one way or another, when the game comes to PC, I'm sure we'll see modders fix it all and add back in whatever costumes Insomniac leaves behind or butchers beyond all recognition. I'm looking at you, Raimi Suit. You want to see the wonder work that modders have done for the first game? Check this out. They even put me in it.
Got any of those internets?
He goes, yeah, I thought it was time for a Miles Morales original. Motherfucker! That's what your first suit was! Cannot convince me. Adidas didn't design this shit and then just pay Insomniac a shitload of money to put this bullshit in the game. What the fuck?
The game's a little glitchy at times, but I don't think it's anywhere near as glitchy as people on Twitter are exaggerating it to be. Even Dunkey made an entire Spider-Man 2 video that was just clips that were pulled from Twitter.
Now here I am spending $700 in a PS5, $70 in Spider-Man 2 for a 6 out of 10 experience. Yeah, this was Xbox fans doing this. Get away.
Take this example of a guy that's boundary breaking one of the bike missions. The dude went out of his way to break the game. The bike isn't supposed to go there, so of course it's gonna glitch out. Now there are genuine glitches and bugs in the game, a lot more than I'd care to admit, like this one that seems to happen with every single boss, where you beat the enemy out of bounds, but then you can't even reach them to get the next hit. But the game really isn't as broken as a lot of people on Twitter are making it out to be. I never even got the spider cube glitch, even though it seems like everyone else did, and I've been playing the game since launch. Most of my playthrough went mostly undeterred. It crashed once, and I had the out of bounds problem with nearly every single boss, but I never really got the glitched out effects that other people seem to be getting. Okay, but here's one thing that did annoy me a lot. It's the same ambulance guide every single time you have to take someone to an ambulance. It's this burnt up Freddy Krueger looking guy with headphones.
Don't worry. I'll get you to an ambulance in no time.
Thank you. You're a good man, Spider-Man.
Bless you, Spider-Man. Bless you, Spider-Man. Bless you, Spider-Man.
My boyfriend's your biggest fan.
Now here's where we cross into spoiler territory. How nice was it to finally have a story where Peter and MJ get to be together and get to be relatively stable and happy? I don't really have much to say on that subject, but compared to their recent statuses across the MCU and the 616, it's really nice to see a version of these characters in a somewhat stable relationship. I feel like Kraven is one of those characters that it's really hard to get right. You have Kraven's Last Hunt, and that's really about it in terms of important, influential, good Kraven stories. Books like Ultimate Spider-Man and games like Spider-Man the movie kind of play him off as a joke.
Welcome, Spider-Man. I am Kraven, the world's greatest hunter. We can begin our glorious contest of strength.
Is that like a sweepstakes? I always throw those away.
Let us hope your body moves as fast as your tongue, Spider.
So it kind of surprised me to see Kraven work so well in the story. His motivations are completely believable, and the way the story overlaps the Lizard plotline with Kraven and Venom's plotlines, it all makes a lot of sense. The first half of the game is really well put together. My thought was that Kraven was really only going to be in the game as brand synergy for the upcoming Kraven movie, but honestly I don't think that's it anymore. I genuinely can't imagine the game working without him. He's an integral part of the story, and he feels genuinely important and intimidating. So when he dies, that weight is felt by everyone in the entire game. In an odd sort of way, Kraven was the only one who actually gets what he wants in the end. The boss fights with Kraven were intense, but honestly all of the boss fights were. I found myself dying over and over again, but I was enjoying the game more than enough to not be frustrated by it at all. And there were times where I didn't even want the boss fights to be over, which is a good thing because they're fucking long sometimes. The Venom, Kraven, and Mr. Negative boss fights were probably my favorites. Maybe the Miles and Peter fight too. But the boss fight that really blew my mind had to be Kraven vs. Venom. The section of the game where you play as Harry rampaging through Oscorp was amazing. It makes me really hopeful that we'll get a Venom spin-off that kind of works in a similar way to how Miles Morales did for the first game. At the very least, whenever the game comes to PC in a year or two, the modders are going to have a lot of fun with these Venom mechanics. Venom in general was another element of the game that just worked. I'm a huge fan of Donny Cates' run of Venom. You can see my video about that run here. So it was surprising as hell to see the null spiral everywhere. That made me very happy. So it's a real shame that he didn't see any kind of credit or compensation for that. I know a lot of people are complaining about Venom's characterization, but my thought was that this is a baby Venom. So maybe whatever happens in the next game, be it something with Carnage or the Hive rejecting him, something is going to make Venom turn against the other symbiotes.
I have decided to stay. On my planet, I am kind of a loser, like you. But here, we could be more.
And I'm thinking that his next host is going to teach him to be a lot more empathetic towards humanity. There's still room for this Venom to grow into the Venom that we know and love, but I do kind of see the criticism that he was a little bit one note. But for the sake of the way that kind of served the Harry Peter story, I don't really mind so much. Another big surprise was how much inspiration this game takes from Web of Shadows. There's even a Web of Shadows Easter egg on Osborn's piano. The giant symbiote nest spirals are the most obvious bit of influence the Web of Shadows has on the game. But even seeing that was the kind of thing that I just did not expect at all in general.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
So where do we go from here? Dropping Cindy Moon at the end feels like an obvious tease that we're going to get more Silk at some point in the future. Do you think they'll switch it up and have Miles be her mentor in the next game? Do you think she could be a potential love interest? Who knows? But at the very least, I'm almost positive that we're going to get a Venom game at some point in the future. The first clue are all the null spirals that are scattered all over the Cletus Cassidy side mission. Fun fact, in the comic books, Cletus Cassidy's grandfather was a cult leader that worshipped Null. He led that cult almost 100 years before Cletus ever even got the Carnage symbiote in the first place. Another hint is when Genki mentions Agent Venom's sidekick, Mania. In case you didn't know, her name is Andy. The fact they spell it like that makes me think that they have to be referencing Andy from the comic books. Something I didn't notice until I saw it pointed out on Twitter was that all of the symbiote grunts seem to be modeled after the Life Foundation symbiotes. I thought that was pretty neat. But the main reason I think we're going to get a Venom game is because of how destructible the environments are when you're playing as Venom, or even when you're fighting against the brutes. Just look at how Venom knocks over these chairs in this clip here. Programming stuff to break like that takes time and effort. Everything in game design is done with a purpose, and I think the way that Venom and the brutes knock stuff around is proof that they're working on destructible environments for future video games.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
I'm thinking like Hulk Ultimate Destruction, but with Venom. Plus there was a rumor a while back that Sony wanted to do a Spider-Man in-game style movie that crossed over all the different Spider-Man movies and all the different Spider-Man villain movies like Kraven and Morbius and Venom. The idea was that Null would be the Thanos that crosses over all the Venomverses and Spider-Verses with each other. I imagine the game would probably go the route of having Carnage be the main antagonist at first, and then swapping him out with Null in the last third of the game. Kinda like how they did with Mr. Negative and Doc Ock, or how they did with Kraven and Venom in this game. Having Null as the main villain of a Venom game would be a great way to introduce the character to more casual audience members, and it'd probably drum up a lot of hype for the character in a future Spider-Verse, Venomverse crossover movie. There are also rumors that Insomniac's working on a Marvel multiplayer game, and that development for Spider-Man 3 is already making headway on pre-production. Now, I'm willing to bet that that Marvel multiplayer game is going to be a Spider-Verse game, and collecting all the spider bots and the cutscene you get afterwards is set up for that game. I'm not saying that's what I want necessarily, but I'm saying it makes a lot of sense with how Sony's corporate mandates work. If you're familiar with the leaked emails from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But for now, the only thing that we know they're working on is Wolverine. So I gotta ask, what game do you want to see her play the most? A Spider-Verse game, a Venom game, Spider-Man 3, or Wolverine? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you've got any theories about what that secret Insomniac multiplayer game could be sure to let me know. I feel like I gotta mention my other videos on Marvel's Avengers and other comic book games. You can check out those in this playlist here. That Avengers video seems to be a big hit with folks, and it's kind of the opposite of this one. In this one, I talked about everything that made Spider-Man 2 amazing, and in the other video, I talk about everything that made Avengers awful. It's wild how the two contrast each other so well. And to cap things off, I'd like to thank our lovely supporters on Patreon, and I'd like to thank you for watching the video. I've been Swim, and I'll catch y'all later.